seabed mineral bill to accelerate the development of our blue economy. And pertinently, the offshore petroleum bill was enacted in December 2021, thereby replacing the outdated Petroleum Act 1970 by a new and modern Offshore Petroleum Act 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Offshore Petroleum Act 2021 opens up new avenues and opportunities for Mauritius as we seek to sustainably develop our exclusive economic zone. It provides more clarity with regard to the processes involved in the regulation of offshore petroleum activities, which include the prospection for, the exploration and the production of petroleum. The Act provides for the Department for Continental Shelf, Maritime Zones, Administration and Exploration, which falls under the aegis of my office, to be the regulatory body for petroleum activities in the maritime zones of Mauritius, and which shall, inter alia, be responsible for the following: to regulate, monitor, and oversee petroleum activities, to issue prospecting permits, exploration licenses, retention licenses, and production licenses, to negotiate on behalf of the government prospecting agreements and petroleum agreements, to facilitate the conduct of petroleum activities, to develop strategies and policies to minimize and manage the impacts of petroleum activities in the marine environment, to advise in the formulation, planning and management of policies in relation to petroleum activities, and to do such other things as may be necessary for the proper conduct of petroleum activities. The Offshore Petroleum Act provides a new regulatory regime and is underpinned by the following principles. First, to encourage private sector participation in the exploration for offshore petroleum through the establishment of a modern and stable regulatory environment, providing for the transparent and even-handed treatment of investors and access to the security of tenure over an area of petroleum potential. Second, to establish streamlined and effective institutional arrangements for the management of the offshore petroleum activities. And third, to apply the principles of predictability, transparency, and accountability for the administration of offshore petroleum activities. The centerpiece of this new regime is the establishment of a concession-based regulatory system which is commonly applied in both frontier jurisdictions like ours and mature jurisdictions. Under such system, rights to engage in the exploration for offshore petroleum would be granted by the government to investors seeking to carry out petroleum activity in defined areas or blocks during the agreed period. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Act provides for a system of titles for the conduct of petroleum activities similar to other jurisdictions such as Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Seychelles. The titles under the Offshore Petroleum Act comprise a prospecting permit, an exploration license, a retention license, or a production license. These four types of titles, as laid out in the Act, shall be granted as follows. A prospecting permit confers non-exclusive rights to the permit holder to undertake low-impact exploration activities such as seismic surveying and other non-surface disturbing activities to search for petroleum. The permit is valid for a maximum of 2 years and may be renewed for an additional period of 2 years by mutual agreement. An exploration license allows the licensee to search for petroleum and carry out sampling and analysis of deposits to explore whether petroleum is commercially viable, as well as to test systems, equipment, and processing facilities. A retention license allows a licensee to recover petroleum in a licensed area for the purpose of an appraisal other than for commercial purposes. And a production license allows a licensee to recover petroleum in a licensed area for commercial purposes. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Department for Continental Shelf, Maritime Zones Administration and Exploration, in consultation with the Attorney General's Office, is still working on a safety code of practice and the environment code of practice. Therefore, as at date, the Act has not yet been proclaimed and no concession or license has been granted for petroleum exploration in our exclusive economic zone. However, I wish to add that in 2016, government invited expressions of interest for the conduct of multi-client seismic surveys for hydrocarbon exploration in 4 selected areas of the exclusive economic zone of Mauritius at no cost to government. The 4 areas selected on the basis of their geological formation and thus the potential for hydrocarbon resources were as follows. 1. An area of approximately 18,000 kilometers square in the region of Agalega. 2. An area of approximately 108,000 kilometers square in the region of the northern Mascarene Basin. 3. An area of approximately 20,000 kilometers square in the region of the northern Saya de Mala. And 4. An area of approximately 228,000 kilometers square in the region of Nazareth and Carcados and Carajos banks. 8 companies had submitted their expressions of interest by June 2016. The bids were evaluated, and in October 2017, the 8 companies were invited to submit their requests for proposal. In response to that exercise, only 3 companies submitted their bids. The bids were assessed, and CGG Services UK Limited obtained the highest marks in terms of compliance with the technical, environmental, and financial criteria. Between June 2018 and April 2019, negotiations were held with CGG Services UK Limited to agree, inter alia, on the following provisions to be included in the agreement. 1. The multi-client seismic surveys will be carried out by CGG Services UK Limited at no cost to government. 2. The geoscientific data collected pursuant to the multi-client seismic surveys shall remain at all times the property of the government of Mauritius. 3. The surveys will be carried out within a period of 24 months as from the date of the issue of a survey license. This period may be extended by mutual agreement between the parties for a period of 1 year. 4. The government will grant exclusive right to CGG Services UK Limited to license the data to third parties on a non-exclusive multi-client basis to use the geoscientific data. 5. CGG Services UK Limited will have an exclusive period of not more than 9 years to market and license the data as from the end of the seismic data processing. At the end of the exclusive period, the exclusive right shall be exercised by the Government of Mauritius. 6. The cost of the geoscientific survey, inclusive of acquisition, processing, interpretation, marketing, and sales, will be $1,450 per line kilometer. And 7. CGG Services UK Limited will proceed with the survey only if it is able to secure pre-commitment underwriting from potential oil and gas companies. In October 2019, Government agreed to award the contract for the conduct of multi-client seismic surveys for hydrocarbon exploration, covering a total of 46,957 line kilometers in 4 selected areas of our exclusive economic zone to CGG Services SAS, and sign an agreement between the Government of Mauritius and CGG Services SAS for the conduct of geoscientific survey. In January 2020, the agreement for the conduct of geoscientific survey was signed between the Government and CGG Services SAS. The agreement provides CGG Services SAS with 18 months of marketing period so as to secure pre-commitment underwriting, that is, a pre-funding from potential oil and gas companies. However, CGG Services SAS has requested that the marketing period be extended due to the following reasons. 1. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on global industry, creating an oversupply of hydrocarbons and consequently reducing oil and gas market prices. As a result, international oil companies have had difficulties to raise investment capital for exploration. And 2, there has been a significant reduction in exploration spending in frontier areas. Following an improvement in the state of affairs regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, CGG Services SAS is pursuing its promotional activities in order to secure pre-commitment underwriting from potential oil and gas companies. Earlier this month, CGG Services SAS were at the Africa Oil Week in Cape Town, South Africa, which is the premier event for oil and gas in Africa, as part of its marketing and promotional activities. Once CGG Services SAS has secured pre-commitment underwriting from oil and gas companies, it will then submit a request for a prospecting permit to the Department for Continental Shelf, Maritime Zones, Administration and Exploration in line with the provisions of the new Offshore Petroleum Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, my government firmly believes that now with a more appropriate framework, which is set out by the Offshore Petroleum Act, it will provide the necessary impetus in accelerating the development of our ocean economy and tapping the latent resources in our vast maritime zones.
Yes. Now, since the Offshore Petroleum Bill, which is yet to be promulgated, is underpinned by the principles of predictability, transparency, and accountability for the administration of petroleum activities, will the Prime Minister state whether the agreements entered into for geoscientific surveys will be rendered public?
Well, it will be done, everything will be done according to law, Mr. Speaker, sir. What is provided in the Act, of course we will have to adhere with all the conditions that the Act provides for.
Now, Prime Minister has stated very clearly that the principles of predictability, transparency and accountability would be applied. He said it when he intervened, when he made the concluding remarks in relation to debates on the bill. I've asked a specific question and I want a specific reply. Will it be made public, yes or no?
Well, the process is laid down in the law which has been voted by Parliament. We will go according to that process, Mr. Speaker, sir.
But you stated the process. The question is simple. When, and would you say loud and clear whether it is going to be made public or not? You cannot simply hide and say that you're going to stick thick and thin to the principles of transparency and accountability. If you do, then it has to be made public.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am saying loud and clear that whatever is going to be done with regard to any application, I've taken the time of the House to mention the different licenses that can be given to a company. And the Act provides for a process that is laid down in order to grant a license to an operator. So that will be done according to what is prescribed in the law.
Honorable Abbas Mahmoud.
Honorable Prime Minister, state whether there has been attempts in the past from independence to 2015 with regard to petroleum exploration in our exclusive economic zone, and if yes, what has been the outcomes?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm informed that the last exploration surveys for hydrocarbon within the exclusive economic zone of Mauritius dates back to the 70s. Seismic surveys were conducted by Texaco to explore the structure and geology of the underlying subsoil. 2 exploratory wells were also drilled on the Nazareth and Saya de Mala banks, and later the research revealed that the findings from the wells were not conclusive and could not be used to completely condemn the region for further prospection. I must also add that it is unfortunate that we have tried to find out, government is not in possession of the data with regard to the survey that was done. And I have asked, in fact, my office to investigate, to try to see whether we could be communicated with those data. But unfortunately, it dates back in the 70s. We are not able even to have proper information from Texaco. We don't know whether the Texaco is still there. But from memory, I can say that I think it was an American company. But we will try to see whether this matter can be pursued.
Honorable Van Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In the Offshore Petroleum Act, Section 74, mention was made about the Petroleum Fund. Can the Honorable Prime Minister inform the House of whether there has been any development with regard to same? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Petroleum Fund is yet to be set up because there needs to be consultations between the Department for Continental Shelf Maritime Zones Administration and Exploration and various different ministries and the Attorney General's office also on the framework that would be put into place. Now, as I say, for transparent fund management and more importantly for each Mauritian to benefit from eventually any revenue that can be generated from any petroleum activity, provision will be made for the raising of funds as follows. The setting of a petroleum fund into which all monies shall be paid and which shall be administered and managed by the ministry responsible for the subject of finance. the payment of royalties and taxes in accordance with the amended Income Tax Act and as will be specified in the Petroleum Agreement, and the payment of charges and such other fees to government as may be prescribed.
Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In his answer, the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned a safety code of practice and an environment code of practice. Can he inform the House on the intent of those codes of practice?
Well, the safety code of practice will definitely ensure safe, secure, and sustainable conduct of petroleum activities while reducing risk factors, maintaining the integrity of the offshore installation, securing the safety of operational personnel, and protecting the marine environment. The Environment Code of Practice will provide further assurance for the sustainable management of the petroleum resources and marine environment of the maritime zones, and it will include protecting the marine environment and associated ecosystems and taking all appropriate measures to protect and preserve biological diversity and rare or fragile ecosystems, as well as species of wild fauna and flora and their habitats, sustaining the potential of petroleum resources to meet the needs of future generations, safeguarding the life-supporting capacity of the environment, and avoiding, remedying, or mitigating any adverse effects of activities on the environment.
Honorable Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honourable Prime Minister mentioned earlier that 8 companies submitted their expression of interest with regard to the multi-client seismic survey in 2016. Can the Honourable Prime Minister provide the names of these 8 companies? Thank you.
Yeah, well, the 8 companies are Geo East Company Limited of China, the Petroleum Geo Services Asia Pacific Limited of Malaysia, Spectrum Geo Limited of the United Kingdom, TGS Nopec Geophysical Company ASA of Norway, Western Geco Limited of UK, Fugro Mauritius Limited of Mauritius, CGG Services SA UK, and Geraldine Geosurvey Limited of Australia.
Next question.
B993, I'm lucky. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part A of the question, Mr. DB, Senior Advisor in my office, is paid a monthly salary of 119,500 rupees plus a monthly extra duty allowance of 25,000 rupees. The other terms and conditions of his appointment are in line with the recommendations contained in the 2021 PRB report. Mr. DB has not been paid any ex gratia bonus. He has been remunerated only as per the terms and conditions of his contract of employment. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to part B of the question, Mr. DB serves on 1 parastatal body and 5 government-owned companies as follows: Gambling Regulatory Authority as Vice Chairperson, Mauritius Duty-Free Paradise Company Limited as Chairperson, Rodrigues Duty-Free Paradise Company Limited as Chairperson, Airport of Rodrigues Limited as Chairperson, Metro Express Limited as Board Director, and Pointe Coton Resort Hotel Company Limited as Chairperson. Mr. Speaker, sir, as Vice Chairperson of the Gambling Regulatory Authority, Mr. DB draws a monthly fee of 35,000 rupees. The remuneration of the chairperson and directors of government-owned companies, as the House is aware, is published in their annual reports. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. DB is currently drawing same remuneration as his predecessors on the different government-owned companies, and such remuneration will be reflected in the annual reports of these companies, which are currently under preparation.
The honourable member, the table has been advised that PQB. Wait. You're more in a hurry than me? The PQB 997 would be replied if time permits by Honourable Minister of Land Transport, Light Rail Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International. PQB 1003 would be replied, if time permits, by the Honourable Minister of Blue Economy, Marine Resources, Fisheries and Shipping. PQB 1006 would be replied by the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness. Honourable members, the table has also been advised that PQB 996 and B 1001, also B 1007, 1004 have been withdrawn. Supplementary.
Can I ask the Prime Minister whether he has received representations with regard to the interference of his senior advisor, Mr. Bikari, DB, in the day-to-day matters, not only at the Gambling Regulatory Authority, where he is vice chairperson, but also in the companies, government-owned companies or public-owned companies, where he is chairperson, and this is causing a lot of stress on the personnel of all these institutions.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the advisor does his duty according to the responsibility that has been bestowed upon him, and I have had no concern with regard to any observation or any communication that he is interfering outside the limits of his responsibility.
Question. Can I ask the Prime Minister whether he has inquired following representation received made public and also representation made to his office that Mr. DB has been meeting the jockeys of the horse racing in private bungalows, or as even the most that is a deputy chairperson of a board, which is not compatible to his appointment as chairperson. So he's not only interfering, he's interfering in horse racing also, and we all know for whom
put your
he's
question.
working.
You have to limit your question.
But you're always...
You have to limit your question reasonably.
I'm ending.
There are free questions in
I'm
there.
ending.
Time is over. Put your question.
But don't put your finger.
Put your question.
But don't show your finger to me.
Put your question. You also don't show your
I
finger.
am not showing.
Put your question.
I've already put my question. I'm
Okay.
waiting for the reply.
Let them
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, these are frivolous allegations that are being made. The honourable member does not communicate any specific information. It just comes to this house, and he does that regularly, just throwing something and trying to throw mud at people. If you are serious,
Order. 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 Honourable Bhagwan, order. There is a question. There is a reply going on.
if you are
Don't obstruct.
let me answer. If you are serious and if you have the courage, repeat those allegations outside.
Honourable
Repeat.
Bhagwan, I'm gently asking you to withdraw from the chamber for the rest of the day. I have already warned you. Please withdraw from the chamber. Sergeant at Arms, please.